So, representative scale points. If you've got a 1 in 1, then you can say that something's guaranteed to happen over the next 12 months. The next representative scale point down is 1 in 2. Now that says that you have a 50% chance that something is going to happen over the next 12 months. A harmful occurrence is going to happen over the next 12 months. So, or another way of looking at it is 1 divided by 2. Next one is 1 in 3, or 1 divided by 3, which is a 33.3% chance that something's going to happen over the next 12 months. And so on, and so on. So the further we get towards the left-hand side of this range, this end, the less likely something is to occur. So when you see a bigger number, remember it's 1 in 5,600, 1 in 3,200. And so if you divide 1 by 5,600, you get a much smaller figure than if you divide 1 by 3. So at the left-hand side of the range, we're saying things are a lot less likely to occur, which can be a little confusing because you've got bigger numbers. So that's fine, but if you've got this whole range from 1 in 1 to 1 in 5,600, then what does this mean if you've got a whole room full of people that are all deciding what they think the likelihood should be? Well, HHSRS in its early stages had a go at doing this, and they found that people would score over a kind of band of likelihoods. So let's say you had a likelihood of between 1 in 24 and 1 in 42 on this bottom band here. So a couple of people would score 1 in 20, 25, 1 in 20, a few more would score 1 in 27, a few more would score 1 in 35, a few more would score 1 in 41. And so it's too much variation in the scoring. So everyone got slightly different final calculations of the risk score for that particular property. So what they decided to do was to try to clump people's opinions on likelihood into bandings, effectively, into ranges. And then for each range, they force everybody in that range to choose one likelihood. So if you were a member of this range looking at scores between 1 in 24 and 1 in 42, then you weren't able to use any of those individual scores. If you're going to score it anywhere in that range, you couldn't use 1 in 25, you couldn't use 1 in 41, you had to choose 1 in 32. And they made that a rule. So if you thought it was somewhere in the range of between 1 in 24 down to 1 in 42, then you had to use 32, 1 in 32 for your likelihood. And if you were to say that it was going to be less likely to occur, then rather than just shifting a little bit to the left, a little bit to the less likely scores, you had to make a big jump from 1 in 32 to 1 in 56. If you were saying it's less likely again, you have to jump again to 1 in 100. And then again from 1 in 100 to 1 in 180. And then again from 1 in 180 to 1 in 320. And so on. So that forced you to make certain steps, quite bold steps in your scoring, to move from one representative scale point to the next one available. So if we look at this in the other direction, if we start off with 1 in 32 and we want to make it more likely, then the next option is 1 in 18, which is a big jump up in likelihood. And the next option after that is 1 in 10, and the next option after that is 1 in 6, and the next option after that is 1 in 3, and so on. And so you can see that it pushes people into making much firmer decisions over their scoring. And the way that this they found it worked when you got a big group of people that were scoring a hazard, was people tended to collectively decide on roughly the same representative scale point. So if you thought it was somewhere in the 1 in 24 to 1 in 42 range, then you would all collectively decide on the 1 in 32 repetitive scale point. If then you'd have another group in the room which would decide that it was slightly more likely, so they would then hop up to the 1 in 18 repetitive scale point. So rather than having a big range of scores running from 1 in 13 to 1 in 42, you only got 2 different scores from your room full of people. And so this is how you collect opinions using representative scale points. Now I've got a fairly scary table here which shows you what these things look like for ranges. So these are not so helpful to you when you're doing your actual scoring. When you're doing your actual scoring, I suggest you just stick with this very simple band of representative scale points and ignore what the ranges are when you're making your final likelihood to score decision. So you've got only these figures here. Just as a little note, if you think it's any less likely than 1 in 5,600, then just for the sake of being pragmatic, the scoring system requires that all scores that are less likely than 1 in 5,600 use the figure, representative scale point figure, 1 in 5,600. So you only use these when you're doing your scoring. But we have to do a bit of work to translate the likelihood scores that we get from the operating guidance, which are averages across the country, because into representative scale points when you do our scoring, because they're not actually given as representative scale points in the operating guidance. They're given as just a cold figure of probability of a harmful occurrence each year. And so to do that, you can use these scoring ranges. And if you're interested in just seeing what each of the scoring ranges represent, then this table is quite helpful to show you. So this table's in the operating guidance. And so we can see that for the representative scale point 1 in 560, that covers all scores between 1 in 420 and 1 in 750. For the representative, the next least likely, so you're going down a step in likelihood from 1 in 560 to 1 in 1,000, then the range of potential scores that could come under that is 1 in 750 all the way down to 1 in 1,300. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense as to what you're doing when you're using the representative scale points.